Hello and welcome everyone to our Icinga Insights today. We're just gonna wait for a few minutes and chat about nothing much for a bit until everyone's here. Just launched the posts on social media as well. So we're just gonna wait for the people to dribble in now, get online, get ready to start.
Yeah, hello and welcome also from my side. I think it's the first time for me joining in this way, this kind of event. So Foy allowed me today to attend here, and I'm happy about that. So it's a little bit weird, to be honest. So there's nobody here except of us, but it seems like there are a few people watching us. Very interesting. Thank you for joining. We also received a couple of questions because we had this registration process, which is also pretty nice. Because couple of people asked why even do a registration process if the stream is going to be public. Turns out it was actually a good idea because we got a feeling about how many attendees we can expect today, and also it gives everyone else the chance to just send us some questions they are interested in previously. So we will address them during the talks. I think many of those questions will be answered, which we pre-recorded, which is also a good thing to do. I learned today.
Yeah, one of our colleagues actually got sick today, so we'll not be having a Q&A from our last speaker personally. But apart from that, we have our pre-recorded talks and Q&A sessions that come in live after each talk. So there's going to be a talk by Blerim, there's going to be one by me. So we're just sitting here talking anyway. And the Q&A session is going to be via the YouTube chat. So if you have any questions, if you want to talk to us, we can see it on our screen to the right here. So hi to everyone who sent a wavy. And that's basically going to be our Q&A for today.
Yeah.
So we can see the numbers growing. The reminder mails are out. People are joining us. So you're going to have the first talk today.
Yes, I will. So we try to keep the talks not too long, so to not overstretch this session today, because everybody else has work to do as well. Anyways, we pre-recorded the talks and they will, I think that most of them are somewhere around 20 minutes, and so is mine, which will be the first of today's talks. So it's about giving a brief summary over what we did during the last couple of months. So even though we try to be as visible as possible on our blog and on social media and other channels as well, sometimes it just happens that you just miss something. So we are going to give a summary over that and also give some insights about what we are working currently on, which is also pretty interesting. Most of the stuff is development, of course, but we also have some projects going on that are not so technical, maybe, but still as important.
Yeah, so when we look at the timetable, we said we'd start at 3, and our talks will just lined up as they are, go until 4:30, with the Q&A sessions that we want to buffer in and have the chance to just talk a little, give you guys a break in between the talks as well. We are estimating that we're going to be finished between 5 and 6 at some point. Sound is too quiet. So I think we should just maybe get a little closer to the microphones and talk up, as we're already maxed out here as well.
Yeah, hopefully this will help.
I
think it's like,
Bit addict. Is this better?
No. Yeah, I think we can check that during the first talk. Maybe that will give us a chance to dig deeper into that. So for some of those of you, the sound seems okay. we will have to figure out if we can change anything here during the first talk.
Yeah, we'll have a look at it during the talk. So we'll just hand over to pre-recorded Blerim for now. And then be back for you in 20 minutes.
See you soon. Hi everyone, and welcome also from my side to this edition of Icinga Insights, which is basically, I think, the first one we are doing in this format. I'm pretty happy to be here today and to get the chance to talk a little bit about the latest projects that we've been working on, and also give you a brief summary about upcoming projects and the current challenges that we are facing and so on. So first of all, who am I? My name is Blerim. I'm the CPO at Icinga, and my responsibilities are mainly about product management, strategy, and basically everything else that nobody else wants to do. What I'm going to talk about today is I would like to give you a short summary about the latest releases that we had of the past 6 months. Just to get you updated, just in case that you missed something. And I also would like to talk a little bit about current projects and how we're going to move forward for the next months, basically. So let me start with a quick release summary. I'm not going too much into detail here because you basically can find all the information online. I just want to make sure everyone here is updated. Regarding Icinga 2, we've been working on lots of bug fixes for the past months. You may have already seen that we had a minor update for Icinga 2.11, but also for Icinga 2.12, which both include the same bug fixes. For the versions 2.11.6 and 2.12.1, we worked on decreasing the amount of IDO queries decently, but also improving the logging of the IDO feature in general. We've been working on improving the API connection handling as well to make it more stable and more reliable when connecting from masters to satellites to agents and so on. But also on a couple of crashes that we prevent now with a couple of bug fixes. There are also some other bug fixes included in those versions. In summary, it's all about stability and reliability. For Icinga Web, we had a couple of releases as well. So the main things in those features are that Icinga Web is ready for PHP 7.4 and MySQL 8 now. We made some smaller changes to the UI and improved also the search and added additional permissions for contacts. The main purpose of those releases, however, has been to also fix some bugs and just to keep everything stable. There is one important release which I would like to mention here in this talk, which was a security release. We've had a report of a security issue in Icinga Web, and the reporter, one of our partners, handled this pretty good with us, gave us the chance to fix everything. So together we decided that we backport the fix to version 2.6 and also to version 2.7 of Icinga Web, and of course also to version 2.8. So just in case you are running any Icinga Web version which is older than these which are displayed here, make sure that you update your Icinga Web installations. We reached out to the community users and also to customers to make sure everyone gets noticed about this. But just in case you've missed that, make sure to update your Icinga Web installations. Another point I would like to talk about is Icinga for Windows. We started this project, I think, over a year ago now. I think 1.5 years now it's going on. So mainly our goal for Icinga for Windows is to provide a solution that is capable of monitoring Windows servers and Windows machines in general in the same way like we do on Linux servers. So with Icinga for Windows, we provide a PowerShell framework, which we use to provide plugins, but also we use the framework to provide easier installation mechanisms and also to allow other users to build plugins for Windows servers in an easier way and in a way that makes it easier to maintain those plugins and to make all of them straightforward. The latest releases, which were version 1.1 and 1.2, included additional plugins. So we are adding more and more plugins to our suite here. The latest plugins that we've added were certificate monitoring, ping monitoring, time, which is basically the same like the NTP check on Linux, monitoring scheduled tasks on Windows as well, but also the disk health of physical machines. We added some event log integration for Icinga for Windows, so you can see, so it works basically like every other Windows application as well. So you have all the logs in your event log as well. We added a REST API in order to be able to query data from Windows agents. And one other thing that we added is a dedicated Icinga terminal for Windows. So this makes it easier for those who heavily use Icinga for Windows to use the PowerShell framework by just opening the dedicated Icinga terminal and work in that. Additional plugins that we've built are focused on MS SQL monitoring. So there's a bunch of plugins included there for general health monitoring of your MS SQL servers, monitoring the resources used by the MS SQL server, but also monitoring performance counters of those database servers in general. So you can decide what kind of performance counters are important to you. It works basically the same way like the general perf counter check, but here it's dedicated to MS SQL. So basically all the counters that MS SQL offers can be monitored with this. But last but not least, also monitoring the backup of your MS SQL databases. And with that, I would also like to continue with Icinga for Windows because we've been working on that heavily for the past months. The latest release of yesterday includes Icinga for Windows 1.3. I'm not going into detail here what is included in that release because Christian is going to talk about that later in detail and show everything that is important for this release. So I'm skipping this here. What I can say is what our future plans with Icinga for Windows are. We've been working on a plugin collection for Hyper-V monitoring as well, in the same way like we did for MS SQL. Those plugins are currently still in a testing phase. We are still waiting for some feedback from customers just to round things up, and they hopefully will be published within the next months. It depends a little bit on how feedback goes, but so far it looks pretty good for us. What is included in there? So in the Hyper-V monitoring plugin collection, we will have a general Hyper-V health check that gives you information about if all the necessary services are running, how the utilization is, how the resources are being used. It includes also general checks about clusters on Windows, which may be Hyper-V clusters, but also can be other clusters, in order to check if your cluster is healthy, if your nodes are up and running, how the quorum is behaving currently, how your cluster shared volumes are behaving, if they are healthy, how much they are being used, utilization, and so on. We also created some plugins for network devices, virtual, but also physical network devices, which include monitoring of the utilization of those devices and also monitoring the network teams on Windows. Another thing that we added is checking physical disks of Windows servers as well. The collection will include also something what we call check by PowerShell, which is an equivalent to check by SSH, which you may know from the Linux world. It works in the similar way. In the case of check by PowerShell, we use WinRM in the background to connect to the server, but the concept is basically the same like by check by SSH. The repository for check by PowerShell is publicly available already, so if you would like to test that and give us feedback, we'd be very thankful for that. Right now, we are still awaiting some feedback from current implementations where we are working together with different users in order to find out if everything is working as intended. And all of these plugins and check by PowerShell for Hyper-V and cluster and network and so on. Our goal is to release them together as a bundle. So yeah, this is something that can be expected within the next time. Moving away a little bit from Icinga for Windows back to Icinga Web. We are currently working here on the next major version, which will be version 2.9. And the main features for these versions, which we already introduced in our blog lately, are the Remember Me feature. So you can stay logged in even if you close the browser window, which we are pretty happy about that we finally have integrated this. We changed a little bit the behavior of dashboards. So basically what you can do in the next version is to drag and drop the widgets in your dashboard to change the ordering, which we also introduced in a quick blog post a couple of weeks ago. We reworked the whole filter editor. So the filter editor is a pretty massive feature in Icinga Web because it has so many options. However, we figured out that the usability of the filter editor can be improved. And we collected some feedback from users, from customers, and based on that feedback, we created a re-implementation of the filter editor, which you can also already find on GitHub, but it will be included in the next version as well, like some other smaller and bigger UX features, which we figured out during our latest feedback rounds. Turning back to Icinga 2 again, yesterday we released version 2.11.7 and 2.12.2, which are also two minor versions in order to fix some issues, especially regarding the cluster reliability. Most importantly, there are fixes for the config synchronization included, but also regarding the connection handling. So it's safe to update to those versions. Usually the bugs that we found out here are encountered by larger environments. So if you didn't have any trouble, that's most likely because it's not one of those very large environments where we found out that these bugs are affected. As you can see, the latest months we've been pretty busy about fixing some stability and reliability bugs in Icinga 2 Core, but also in Icinga Web. All of these minor versions were or are very important to us because they impact the Icinga installations in general. So giving those issues a higher priority was natural for us. And on the other hand, it of course interrupts our work on newer projects like Icinga DB. Independently from that, we've been busy testing Icinga DB with larger configurations and reproducing environments from large-scale environments, which is going pretty good right now. We received lots of feedback from the community as well, which we are targeting now. So we have some smaller issues that we still need to target and to fix. we decided to re-implement some things, some smaller changes in order to make them more stable. But we are also currently working on PostgreSQL for Icinga DB. One topic that is still a little bit open and still to be evaluated is how we are going to migrate from IDO to Icinga DB. What we definitely want to have is we want to allow users to have a smooth migration path, and we also want to allow users to receive support even when a final Icinga DB is released, to have still support for IDO for a certain amount of time. The migration path from IDO to Icinga DB is a little bit tricky because there are multiple options on the table right now which we are evaluating. Some of them include dumping the data from A to B and changing it. Other options are visualizing the data from both databases, and some other options as well. Each of those options have their pros and cons, of course. Right now we still have to figure out what the best way for our users is, and how the migration can work and how we can implement it technically. So even though we've been pretty busy with bug fixes lately, Icinga DB was not completely standing still, but we are happy that we finally have released those minor versions of Icinga 2, so we can hopefully focus on Icinga DB again for the next time. In parallel to that, we've been working on Icinga modules as well. So you may have seen it in our blog that we were working on PostgreSQL support for the certificate monitoring module. This is ready for testing. So you can already see that right now we always leave a little bit time for everyone to give us feedback on everything. We do this in order to have more stable releases. So this is also the way we are working with the certificate monitoring PostgreSQL support. If you are using this right now, we'd be happy to receive your feedback. So after a couple of weeks, I think we will be ready to publish this in a release as well. We are working on Icinga DB support for different modules as well. So we do this in order to keep the time between Icinga DB release and the update of the modules as short as possible. That's why we are working in parallel teams here. So currently we are working on the Cube and on the business process module to get Icinga DB support for them, and the other modules will follow as well. Last but not least, I do have some non-technical updates I would just like to mention here because they are as important as the technical projects as well. So for the past months, we've been working on an Icinga brand in order to have a visual and textual identity for Icinga, which is pretty important to us, especially when showing Icinga to someone else, when describing to someone what Icinga is and explaining how it works. We think that we need to improve there, and we've been working on that for a couple of months. I will not go into detail here because Julia will explain everything later in detail, how the process was, what the result is. As of today, you can already see that we relaunched the Icinga website as a first result of this Icinga branding story. And the details you can get from Julia later. Foy worked a lot on community topics in order to find out how we can improve our communication to the community, how we can engage community members more, and how we can be more open to the community and how we can include everyone else better. Of course, there's always room for improvements there, but I'm pretty happy about the results that we have right now, as you can see here with the Icinga Insights event, that we hope to be able to do this regularly with the feedback week last 2 weeks ago, but also with the Community Hero program. Not going into detail here as well because Foy will explain that later. in detail. We've been working on our partnering program. As you know, we are working with companies across all the globe to bring Icinga services to end users. So we made a couple of changes to the partner program as well, which are visible on the website now. And we've been growing a little as well. So we had new hires on the Icinga core team, but also for partner management. And that's pretty cool to see how we are able to grow and to move forward in order to be able to deliver even better and more releases with nicer and shinier features in the future. And with that, I would like to end my talk here. Thank you very much for joining me today. I, of course, will be available for questions now. So if you want to know anything, please feel free to ask your questions. I hope I have the answers for you. And yeah, thanks for joining us today.
So we're back in the studio. You can hear us. Okay, there were some questions for us. I think you wanted to start answering them, Blerim.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I just saw the video here. I look super tired. That's not my normal face. Here's the normal face. During the recording yesterday, it seems like it was a little bit exhausted maybe. Anyways, I hope you still received the information you were looking for regarding those topics. I would be happy to answer those questions. One was from Adolfo, who asked about the Icinga for Windows and if it would be a replacement for the agent. A couple of you have answered already. Just in case, I would like to answer that as well. So it is not a replacement for the Icinga agent. Icinga for Windows is more like an addition to it. So Icinga for Windows uses the Icinga agent in the background to execute the checks. This is the default behavior. And additionally to that, we are currently building check by PowerShell for those use cases where you cannot install the Icinga agent on your Windows machine.
Yeah, and the next question from Carsten was whether we can change the size of every single widget then. And there was actually a blog post about it just a while ago. I'm going to link it in the chat. I've already prepared it, and you can actually see a GIF of it happening. So you can most definitely change it, and you can have a read through the blog post, maybe after the event.
Yeah.
So was there another question? So there was another question on the release of the Icinga DB. So is there a release date or a date for the next release candidate yet?
It's one of the most common questions. I can say that honestly. It's as you can see from the talk, it's always a matter of prioritization. So from our perspective, of course, we would have loved to work on Icinga DB for the past months, but as it is in software development, sometimes we have to reprioritize things. In this case, it was a couple of bugs we figured out in Icinga 2, which we prioritized higher than Icinga DB because they were more important to us. Anyways, we are back on track with Icinga DB development, and we will hopefully have results as soon as possible. As for a release date for a next RC or a general release, there is no date set, honestly, because it's basically impossible to know whatever we will figure out on our way to finalizing it. We received lots of very good feedback from different users, from test customers. We are testing on our own, as mentioned in the talk, and testing with different variations of configuration usually brings up some other things, and we would just like to address as many of them as we can before we actually say it's ready to use. But we are, of course, working on it.
So basically, it's ready when it's ready.
Like in software development, usually it's done when it's done, but we are getting closer.
All right. Well, another question popped up now. Is Check by PowerShell already considered from your side to be ready for production usage?
Pardon, can you repeat that?
Is the Check by PowerShell already considered from your side to be ready for production usage?
So basically, I would say yes. However, we know about one very certain issue that it has. So we figured out in very special installations that it can happen that Check by PowerShell is not able to authenticate, even though we have different authentication mechanisms in this plugin implemented. There is currently one issue that is pretty difficult to reproduce, and we are trying to reproduce it for a couple of weeks now, where in certain scenarios it's not able to authenticate. So this may happen. From the test cases from the users, we received feedback so far. It happened on I think at 1 or 2 installations. Other installations work very fine. Right now we still don't know why exactly sometimes it's failing. So it's when it's failing always, so you will know immediately. And if it's working, it will work. But until we figured out what is going on with this authentication error, we will not take a release.
Okay, I think that answers the question pretty well. There is another question that is, how does the Icinga terminal work on Windows? And I think we should postpone that question for a bit, because we're going to have Christian speak about the Windows topic in its own talk later. So I think it's better if you go and ask the expert himself. So if you stay tuned for, I think it's another 40 minutes roughly, then you're going to be able to ask Christian himself. Yeah, and I think we already have some questions that we got in advance as well.
Yeah, I was just checking them. If I can find something that was not addressed in this talk or will not be addressed in one of the next talks. We received questions about the Icinga DB. I hope that we could answer them by now. If not, please let us know if anything was uncertain. Besides of that, there is a question about Icinga reporting. What about the next version? So we still are at the same stage like a while ago. So there is a template feature in Icinga reporting which is already ready. The next steps include adding functionalities to combine Icinga reporting with Icinga DB as well, which is kind of being done in parallel to the Icinga DB development. So I would say it will be very close to the Icinga DB release.
Okay. For now, it looks like we're done with the questions in the chat, and looking at the time, it's also already Tom's turn to talk about the Icinga Director and what's new with that. So I'm gonna hand over to the pre-recorded talk from Tom now.
Hi, thanks for having me here at the very first Icinga Insights edition. As you can see, there's snow in Nuremberg right now. It's pretty cold outside, so this is a perfect day to have a look at some hot new features in Icinga Director 1.8 while staying inside. You, as an Icinga administrator working with the Icinga Director, your job should consist of 2 main tasks. Automate as much as possible and delegate all the rest to other people. In this short talk, I'll give you some practical example using a scenario where I'm going to show you very quickly how to achieve those goals and how you can get better at this right now with or by using some features available in this release right now. Of course, we need to log in. And here we go. You see an Icinga installation. There's nothing in here. Let's have a look at the director. It complains it has no database resource configured. So just for fun, let me show you my console. And let's start my director daemon in the foreground. It complains the database configuration isn't valid. So let's give him one, and you can then immediately see that the error message changes, because now it says the database has no schema. So let's create one, and great, we are here. Now the daemon says that it's connected, and you can also see that the front end, the daemon tab recovered, the daemon is green, everything is fine, we're ready to go. Maybe let's make this a little bit bigger. You can see one new feature over here. We now support PHP version 8.0. This has been released 4 days ago, and we already support it officially. Now, if you go back to the dashboard, it says, well, we are still not connected to Icinga 2, so let's do this. I have an empty Icinga running here. It's running in a container, so let's give it my IP address, simple user, and simple password. Of course, you should have a secure one. Now the director is importing all external objects, and by external I mean objects defined inside Icinga, so commands shipped with Icinga, external check commands, and so on. So these are commands Icinga already carries in its ITL. You can see them here. We cannot change them, we can clone them, we can extend them, but they haven't been created inside the director. Let's deploy the configuration just for fun. Nothing changes. You will see that. Let's wait till Icinga restarted. Now it's ready, and you can see it started with there are no services, no hosts right now in my configuration. Or maybe you can see better if I move out of the way a little bit. So next step is to prepare this Icinga installation for our users. I make just a very quick example. The goal should be our end users should be able to create their own host in a very simple way. And I want to build wizard-like forms to guide them through the configuration. So first of all, I want in this example we create one base template where we choose a device type. Let's say we have network devices, physical and virtual servers. We choose a vendor, and let's stop here for now. Quickly, let's create a list. My device types. And here let's add my network. Then I have my physical server, and I have a virtual server. These are enough types for now. And I create two more lists. I have my network vendors. Let's quickly add first ones that came to my mind. Cisco, no preference here. Juniper, Mellanox. Let's add 5 to the list. Add a 5 to the list. So, and same for server vendors. Here I have Dell, of course. We have Thomas Kren. PHP, and so on and so on. This is enough for now. And now let's create fields. I want my users to choose a device type. And that's what's device underscore type. Small one, the field name is written to the Icinga configuration. The user should be presented a nice label. If it's not clear what's going on, please add a nice meaningful description. And now as a data type, we choose data list. The list name is device types, and we do not want to store multiple device types, but only one of them per host, so the target data type is a string. One more field, I have my server vendor. Once again, a list, server vendors, target data type string, and one more, there is the network vendor. And even here, a list, network vendors, a string, and that's fine. The maybe element behavior, you can have it as a drop-down. You can also say, I want to have auto-completion and show strict or show list values only. I want to have auto-completion but allow for values that are not on the list. And I can have a text field doing auto-completion, but when I add a value that's not on the list, it would automatically extend my list. So I could, for example, have a field location, allow my users to extend the list. I provide a default list, and if someone uses a new location, my list is extended automatically. And then maybe from time to time I can check back for duplicates, because maybe they're just adding elements to the list because they've typed or have typos in names and so on. So then you can clean up later on. This depends on you. Some people want to be very strict, others want to make it easy for users, but then of course it's not so clean if you're not strict. That's it for now. Let's go to my host object and create a new template. I want to have a base, or I call it default host, and I add a check command is host alive. That's it, nothing else. And maybe as I see agent right here, you have absolutely to listen to Christian's talk if you're interested in Windows. The Icinga for Windows is a very nice product, and Icinga Director 1.8 offers integration for the new Icinga for Windows implementation. So let's just for fun create a new template. These are my Windows agents. I can import my default host. I don't have to. I can also say, well, define this one different. And then what I change here are my agent and zone settings, because I want to have, say, this should be an Icinga agent. I want to establish the connection to the agents, or no, let's do it the other way around. The agent should establish the connection to the master, that's better. Whether the agent accepts configuration, and here we go. And this template, if you switch to the agent type of a template, this is a feature that existed before. You can generate a self-service API key. If you do not know what this is all about, you can read the documentation here. Right now I generate a key just to show you one thing. Icinga for Windows is perfectly integrated here, and if you distribute the PowerShell module for this, or installed Icinga for Windows, then you can just run this via PowerShell remote or manually on your host, to new hosts, to register them in an automated way. Icinga example.com is the URL of my setup here, and the self-service API key is the template key, and this allows hosts to register them once using this template. So once a new host gets deployed, it will automatically pop up. And the Icinga for Windows provides also nice baskets with a lot of predefined check commands for Icinga for Windows to be used inside the directory with lots of data fields and so on and lists. And before Director 1.8, those baskets didn't work very well because they were generated in a different way. Right now, Director 1.8 supports them perfectly. So one more nice feature in the new release. But let's go back to our default host. That's what we wanted to configure. We have our fields, and let's add our first field. That's the device type. Device type should be mandatory, and I want to show it based on a filter. No, sorry, device type is always there, but based on the device type, I want to show network vendor, but only when the device type equals, I have auto-completion here, it says network device, that's fine. Only for network devices, it should show the network vendor fields, and I want to have this mandatory fields. So that's one step, and the next one is I want to have server vendor here, also mandatory depending on device type, and of course only for physical servers. That's it for now. Let's have a look how this behaves. I want to create a new host. I choose, so if a user clicks new host, you can choose a template, default host. Let's say, okay, that's cool. I don't know, my first load balancer. And let's give it an IP address. Nothing else. Let's go down to device type, and here if I choose network device, you see a drop down, network vendor. If I choose physical server, I have the servers. Let's stick with network, because this is a network device and it's an F5 load balancer. So that's it. Let's create my host, and I created this new host in a very easy way. If I have a look at the preview, I can see device type is network device, vendor is F5 in this example. And I stop here, and that's it for the first part of the talk about how to delegate work orders. You should create templates in a way that they are very simple to use and easy for your users, because you should delegate the daily work to them. You do not want to create hosts or to change thresholds and so on. That should be their task. One last thing, I skipped a new feature. We have data field categories over here. Let's create one, because if maybe let's head back to the host. You see here custom properties. Over time you could have a lot of them, and it's then not so easy to use, not so nice. So Director 1.8 has data field categories. You can create them and say, well, these are inventory settings. Let's pick all my fields and place them into this category, 1 and 2 and the last one. And so if we now go back to our form, you will see that this is called inventory settings. So you can have different sections for different type of settings. For example, if I say this is a network device, I could then pop up the SNMP settings. If you choose a protocol, you can, based on the protocol, like if it's version 1 or 2, I offer the community string. If you choose version 3, I'm going to show you the username, the encryption settings, and so on. So that's it for that part, and now let's move on to the automation. I realized that I'm running way out of time, but fortunately we are pre-recording this, so I stopped the recording and prepared what we need right now to go on here. So let's move on to the automation part. I created some import sources. First of all, I have a very simple CMDB. You see a query asking for host name and IP address from a host table, and that's it. I added one modifier. This is a new one. There is get host by address, so you can we already had get host by name. This is now a reverse DNS lookup. As we only have the IP address, just for fun, I make the reverse lookup. And here it is not very useful because my fake CMDB ships only loopback addresses, so the reverse host is always localhost. But you can see the modifier works. This is new in Director 1.8. What's also new is right here the download JSON link. You can, sometimes you have large imports and you want to figure out whether something is in there or not. So just download it as a JSON file and dig deeper in that file. This is new. Then we have this import source, it's fine. The next import source is a nice one. I created just for fun an Excel file. Let me show you the file so you can see what I mean. Well, there's nothing to see in there, but you can see down here there are other worksheets. So let's switch to the roles. And here you can see I have servers in here. There's a leading space, that could be a problem. We have a comma separated list of roles those servers have. And there's another tab. We have application servers. So here you see in the first column there are servers. They span multiple rows. And we have instances. Let's say these are Tomcat application server instances, and each of them has a specific port. So we want to first attach the rows to my servers from the CMDB, and then do something with the application servers. Let's start with the server rows. So the preview is pretty different. So this is the result I want to have, the server and the row. In the modifiers, what I did is first I trimmed the server name. As you saw, there were some spaces. This is a very simple modifier, but was missing. This is new in this release. You can trim strings, so you can say I want to trim the beginning and the end. You can also just trim the beginning or the ending. And you can also define a character mask and decide which characters to trim. This was possible with regular expressions till now, but saying just trim is way easier. Then I use regular expressions to split the role with a comma. I could also use a simple split. Let me see. We could make an example. If we delete this one, make a preview, you see the row is still a string. We could then add a normal split, not a regular expression based split. So here you choose a delimiter, comma, and the properties important. I have to choose a row, and now we see that it's split, but you can see here my SQL server has a space in there. Now what's interesting, also here I can just add the trim modifier. So I select my my role and say modifier trim. Trim. Beginning with ending, that's fine. Preview, and it worked. What's nice about property modifiers, they also work with values in arrays. So if you write a property modifier as a developer, you can build the property modifier in a way telling the director, hey, I'm able to deal with arrays, and then you get a full array. Otherwise, your modifier will get only every entry of the array, and will be applied to every member of an array. So this is perfect. Now we have no more regular expression here. Trim is way simpler. Trim, split, trim, and that's it. That's our result. Pretty simple. Let's check for changes. Nothing to do. It looks exactly the same like my one before. Then the next variant, just to remember what the X looked like, we here have application servers, instances. What I would love to do is, I want to create for every Tomcat instance, I want to create a virtual dummy host in Icinga with its own port, and then I want to assign some services to those Tomcat. But let's move on step by step. I removed the Excel here. This import source here has been a clone of the former one. So what I initially had was what we saw right now, and this here now ships me a list. Forget about the server names. I am only interested in that part here. I want to have a list of all available roles only once. So what did I do to get this? Let's maybe redo this together step by step. I clone this source and say I want to have another one. And here I add a new modifier to the role. And the modifier I choose is a new one. And this one clones the whole row for every entry of an array. So we have an array of rows, and this would now flatten the array, but create one new row for every entry of the array, or drop the row if the array is empty. Let's have a look. And you can see it duplicated all the rows where we have multiple roles, and in case there is a host without a role, it would be dropped. Forget about this server column here. I cannot delete columns, but we ignore it for now. We just need the rows because I want to fill a data list with these values. So one more modifier. Also this one is a new one in Director 1.8, and this one is able to skip a row if the value appears more than once. This is like a distinct function. And let's add this one, and you can see only those rows are left. Perfect. All I have to do is I want to use this as an identifier when updating something. Because of that, I changed my key column name to role. And let's check if it works. It would apply changes. Let's have a look at the preview. Well, okay, it's slightly different than the one I had. No, forget it. It just changes because it is new. So yeah, trigger, and we have an import. That's it for now. This one has the same output. So let's delete one of them. This was just to show you how I achieved this goal. And I didn't want to clone, I want to delete it. Okay. Last one, Tomcat instances. You remember in the Excel sheet there was the server name spanning multiple rows, and there was then an instance name and a port in there. What I get is this one here. So let me maybe show you the Excel file once again. We transform this and this up here. I have created a new name where I combined the instance name with the application name, with the server name. I have port in the dedicated column, this is okay, and I have the instance still there. So modifiers should be pretty simple. Let's show you. First of them is a split, the role. Same thing here, we could also just use a normal split and then trim the value, but this way with a regular expression, with one operation, I get rid of eventual optional white spaces. And the second one just combines multiple properties, and there's a pattern where I say I want to have instance on server and this in brackets. So the result is this here. These are my new import sources, and now let's have a look at the sync rules. The first one is pretty simple. I create hosts from the Icinga DB. You can see here I already triggered this time ago, but I deleted the host in the meantime, so let's have a look. I have a property that imports the default host template. I have a column here where I write the address fields or the IP address field to the address fields. And I pick this reverse host column and write into a custom variable named reverse host. Pretty simple. Preview, it will create 9 new hosts. Trigger, that's fine. And you can see I create some hosts. Very simple. Let's go back. And now we have rows from the Excel file. And I want to just set these properties, also just single property to those hosts. You remember, every host has an array with eventual rows. So what's special here, and this is also new in Director 1.8, we have an update policy update only. So this means that this would never create or delete any object. It will just set this or the defined properties on existing objects in case such object is there. This is amazing. Imagine if you, for example, import your host from a CMDB or from LDAP or whatever, and you have, let's say, VMware as your virtualization environment. So pick the vSphere DB module as an import source and get all your custom properties from all VMs. But you do not want to have all the VMs in your monitor because you have lots of test VMs, you do not want to see them. So you can just pick important properties, sync them from that specific source and attach them to objects in case they already exist. So even if I set purge true, this would be ignored for update only, so this will never purge. Properties, very simple. I just set the role custom variable to role. Let's have a look at the preview. This is also a nice new feature, but an older one. So if you click preview, you see what the sync rule would do, and you can see that it would now apply a property to all of our, or 5 of our hosts. Looks good, trigger the sync. Perfect, done. Next one, the list of the roles. I want to synchronize it to data list. Here, this says it is in sync. Let's maybe go to the data list. I forgot to delete this one. It's pretty simple. I have a list with my server rows, and here we have key value the same. This got synchronized. And what I also did, I have a related field right now that I created in the meantime, and this creates application roles. And here I decided to allow users to extend the list with new values. So I do not want to purge values here. If there is a new role, I just want to extend the list and leave it alone, or leave the values there. So let's go back to our sync rule. This is the role list, and let's maybe have a look at the properties, because this is special. If you in an import source say I want to have a list ID, as a property, as an object type, I choose the data list, and if I choose list ID, then here it proposes the names of the list. So I do not have to write IDs. Down here you can see internally it stores the ID. So if you rename the list, this will still work. Then I write the role to entry name and entry value. Both of them are the same. And that's it. This sync is fine. Then the last one, create Tomcat instances. This is a nice one. I create host objects, and as properties, I import a Tomcat instance template. I set a parent host property. I set the Tomcat instance custom variable and the Tomcat port. Preview, it will create 5 new objects. Trigger it, and we have 5 new hosts. And this host, if you have a look, imports Tomcat instance. Tomcat instance has a dummy check, and I did a little trick here. I used a dummy check command because I do not need to check the host for the instance, because I just the host itself should be running. So what I do here is I write a comment in there and write, this is not a real host, but a Tomcat instance running on, and there's a link linking to the parent host. And what I also did is, based on this, you can see here in the services, I added a service set directly to the template. If you preview this, you can see that, oh no, you do not see it here. However, it's a problem. We have no related hosts right now. However, it will render this in a way that every entry of the service set will be rendered as a apply rule applied to all hosts carrying this template. And the last involved component is a dependency. I created one of them and I said dependency based on parent host, and a very simple dependency, no assign rule, but what I did is related object. I said a parent host is host vars parent host, similar to the example shown here. And if you look at the preview, this creates 2 apply rules. One of them applies to those who have parent host as a string. The other one applies to those who has parent host as an array, and creates a dependency for every host that has a parent host property either as an array or a string, and the related dependency will be created. So this is nice. If I show it fully resolved, you can see that in the parent I defined disable notifications true and in your soft state false. Cool. So this makes part of our last sync rule. I do not remember, did we trigger it? We did already. Okay, fine. Then we have some changes here in the activity log. Let's deploy the changes and let's see what happens. Icinga is restarting, it is ready, fine. Some apply rules do not match. Okay, this is, I defined the set for MySQL slave instances. I have no slave right now, so this is correct. Now, wow, I have quite some results. They're already here because I've been running them before. However, you can see well, this MySQL check, let's have a look. We didn't look at this right now. This is part of the MySQL server checks service set. You can override some values here. You do not see a password because it is masked, but you can still override it. And the host itself has the role MySQL server, and my service set with those checks in there, this MySQL server checks, has an apply rule and says assign it to all the hosts who have the MySQL server template or to every host where MySQL server is in its roles. Nice. And here you can see this matches 3 of my hosts. And last thing I want to show you are the Tomcat hosts. Maybe let's go to the host list and let's pick one of those instances because they are nice. You can see here it writes in the plugin output, this is not a real host, but a Tomcat instance running on application1 example.com. Cool. Let's click there and you can see it directly opens the parent. This is very useful. And in the services, you see apply services. And here you can see this one here has been applied for port 8881. These are just fake services, but for this one I used a custom variable with the port in the definition, so you can see they are perfectly usable. And if I pick another host, maybe it was a shop, let's pick a web application, or let's pick with Where's admin? Here, this is the admin frontend. This should be port 8880. And yeah, here you go. This is working perfectly fine. So as I am way out of time, I would like to stop here. And as a last message, please try out the new Icinga Director version 1.8. It has been released and should work fine and bring you some very nice new features. Stay safe. Thank you for listening. Bye.
Hello again. So we are back and we brought Tom with us. So
Yes, this time even with colors.
yes.
Happy to see him today. Hey Thomas, you're able to hear us?
That
Hi, I'm
doesn't-
hearing you.
Ah yeah. Okay.
Sorry, I broke my video setup, so right now I'm here in front of the green screen.
Yeah. Cool. So we had a couple of questions in the chat. So first of all, thanks for those great insights for the upcoming director release. Looks pretty cool. So I would hand over to those questions we had right now.
Yeah, so the first question was, one pet peeve with this is in the monitoring module, it shows you the key and not the label. Is there a way to show the director label in monitoring or to rename existing ugly keys?
That's a very nice suggestion. So it's director writes Icinga configuration, and the configuration then finishes written by Icinga itself in the IDO database, and the monitoring module reads from there. So we do not have the label in there. But what we can do is we have a hook in the monitoring module that would then allow the director to override the rendering of those custom variables. So this is perfectly possible, at least technically. Could you please open an issue on GitHub? So just as a reminder that we do not forget about this, because this, I would love to have this.
Okay, I think that answers the question really nicely. The next one was, I'm lagging behind a bit, so excuse if this has already been answered. Will the Director 1.8 support modifiers on import and sync rules when importing baskets?
Yes, that's perfectly possible. It should also have been working since 1.7, but there have several little bugs been involved. It should work since quite some time in the master, but right now with 1.8, absolutely.
Okay, then we have another question, and that is, will Director 1.8 be able to export hosts manually created in the Director?
Well, you can export all the hosts from Director, either via CLI or via REST API, or just download it in the front end. Director itself has intentionally no distinction between manually and automatically created hosts, but you can easily create this for yourself by adding a flag to your imported hosts to be able to distinct them from the normal ones.
Okay, thank you. And there's another question from in the video, and that's, is it possible to skip row on failure in a sync rule?
Yes, depends on the failure. So one feature that has often been asked for was skipping an error on duplicate key or so. That's right now, as you have seen in the talk, a property modifier exactly for that reason. And there are a lot of other modifiers that could cause problems, like I don't know, DNS lookup failing, or you're transforming an array and data doesn't ship an array, and so on and so on. And all these modifiers usually have settings where you can specify what to do on failure. So you can normally say set null on failure, or set an empty array on failure, or let the whole import run fail. So these are the options you have, and they give you great flexibility. But on some errors, you want to trigger or you want to let the whole import fail. And of course, if your source is failing, then there's no way to skip rows.
Okay, thank you. I just saw there's another question that came in, and that's will there be a role-based module in the director anytime soon, so we can have different levels of permissions like hosts and services, backend, etc.
Well, so there already since quite some time. I wanted to showcase this in my talk, but it was going way too long, so I skipped that part. What exists right now is just you can grant permissions on host groups. So you give a team access to modify hosts based on host group level. You can, this also works if your host groups are apply rules. So this allows you to do all weird combinations of properties like custom variables and so on. So you can assign groups based on a couple of different vars. And then you grant specific rows in Icinga Web access to those host groups. That's what works for now. And then they're able to create hosts, to clone existing ones. Creating new ones had some issues. This has improved with Director 8, and they can create only new hosts that make part of that group again, so they cannot escape that rule. What else? There are different kind of permissions, like you can, for example, those users, then you can give them access to only some of the hosts, but show them the activities and the source code to generate the code to preview. Or you can, for example, just show them that there have been activities and which ones, but do not show them the code itself to hide sensible data from them, and so on and so on. So there are a couple of different restrictions you can pair.
Okay. I think that answers the question already.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, so we'll give the chat another minute to come up with more questions. And I will answer a question that has been posted to me on social media, and that is why I'm wearing such a silly hat. And that's because I have green hair, and that does not work too well with a green screen. So I'm just trying to hide behind my beanie for now, to provide a little less distraction. Okay. There's been a follow-up to the question from just now. That was, okay, but those are all web permissions, but not director-specific ones. So maybe there's going to be a talk about it on the next OSMC or something?
No, these are really, these are restrictions in the director module. So you can define them for the director itself. They're not directly related to the monitoring module restrictions or so on.
Okay, well, maybe we can also follow up on that a bit later.
Maybe one more note on that. Right now it is limited to that restriction on groups. We're planning to offer all kind of restriction in the future. That's one feature we scheduled for one of the next releases. We're going to provide a flat resolved cache of all objects with all inherited properties, all resolved assigned rules, and so on. And then we will be able to offer much more. But you should be able to get very far with what exists right now.
Okay, thank you, Tom, for answering the questions and being here with us.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
I think we're going to have to move
on
to the next
for having me. Sorry for the
soon.
ugly green screen.
Thank you. See you soon.
So see you soon. Stay safe. And have a good one.
See you.
All right. So
I'm quite amazed how well this worked out with the video call and the stream. I honestly wouldn't have expected it, but it looks like this is working pretty good.
Yeah, and it was just a Jitsi call.
Yeah.
So
cool.
I think that was pretty dope. So in case you have more questions to Tom about the director, you can just leave them in the chat here, and we'll see if we can maybe fit them in later after the next talks. Because now we're gonna have to move on to our Windows topic from Christian. So he's gonna give you some insight on Icinga for Windows.
Hello everyone and welcome for a small talk today about Icinga for Windows version 1.3.0, which we released yesterday. So, first of all, thank you everyone for joining into today's online Icinga meetup. And from my side, my name is Christian Stein, working for Icinga and being part of the development team regarding Icinga for Windows. And yeah, that's basically the topic we will talk about today. So basically, what is Icinga for Windows? Icinga for Windows is a monitoring solution based on PowerShell to ensure that we can execute checks on local machines to get, let's say, CPU data, service information, disks, and so on, and later present it within Icinga Web 2 as simple check outputs from our plugins. So we have two main topics we will focus today for this session. So at first, it's the Icinga PowerShell framework, which is basically the basic set of tools required for not only managing Icinga for Windows and the Icinga agent, but also to ensure, for example, we can do automated development tasks and deployment handling, but also provides the entire library for writing custom plugins. So whenever you want to write an own plugin, you can head to the developer guide, use the basic framework functionality we provide to develop your plugins, to manage the documentation, check configuration, and so on. For example, that you can import them into the Icinga Director as baskets or simply the configuration files for Icinga 2. And of course also custom background daemons, for example, that we support since version 1. So basically you can have background tasks running, executing checks, providing a REST API, and so on. And the other topic we'll be talking today are the PowerShell plugins. So basically the PowerShell plugins are a very, very basic set of tools we provide to monitor a regular Windows system. So this does not include any sort of Exchange or Active Directory or MS SQL. So it's simply plain Windows monitoring. So when you install a new client machine or a new server machine, everything that's out of the box there is shipping with the basic plugins we provide. And currently there are 22 of them. So that includes CPU, memory, disks, services, but also the time configuration, uptime, Windows updates, processes. You can check file hashes, for example, directories, and so on. So there's plenty of plugins available here. And yeah, the installation is straightforward with simple commands. And also, since the version 1.3.0, we also ship pre-compiled check commands, not only for the director, but also for Icinga 2 itself. So you can simply use them, and later on they might be integrated into the ITL. But for now, you can simply import them using the director baskets or simply the configuration files. Now, what's new with version 1.3.0, which was released yesterday on December 1st? So, of course, we did lots of bug fixing and a lot of improvements for the solution itself. But the most important parts or the most interesting parts, for example, are that we with Icinga 1.3.0 also released a knowledge base. So basically what it will allow you is, in case there are some sort of exceptions that might require additional details, additional solutions that would simply not be beneficial to put into a plugin output, you will now receive notifications with a link to the knowledge base ID or to the knowledge base entry to look up, for example, how to set up WMI permissions, but also additional other troubleshooting tasks. In addition, we also made it now possible that the Icinga command you can simply type now accepts arguments as as additional parameter argument. So basically what it is that when you have a local session with credentials or something like that, you can now pass them into a new Icinga shell to test frequently, for example, during development tasks, if authentication is possible, if the output is properly handled, and that's basically what this is about. And of course, we also added a new command that will open the shell as a different user, which is very helpful for troubleshooting. So for example, when you have a custom user defined, you can create an Icinga shell for this specific user and test all arguments if the permissions are set properly or if the access in general is possible. In addition, I already mentioned it within the knowledge base, but we also added now the opportunity to set WMI permissions over PowerShell commandlets. So you can simply grant permissions for a specific namespace to a certain user and therefore ensure that plugin execution is handled properly. And last but not least, we added one experimental feature right now that will enable code caching support, which will improve the performance. So general, what it does is it will compile all PowerShell modules from the Icinga PowerShell framework into one single module file, which will then be loaded whenever a plugin requires it, or when you run Icinga, for example, in a new PowerShell, that will improve the performance a lot for the loading time itself. Yeah, so now basically what we can now do is let's have a look on it, on how these new features look and how to use them. When we, for example, have a look on the let's say on the Icinga Web 2 interface, we have plenty of checks here. Of course, also because we are doing this on the MS SQL server, we are using additional MS SQL checks here. But in general, for example, we get some sort of exceptions here that this user cannot log in itself, or for example, that our scheduled tasks are not finding the unknown or the reboot task package here. So basically, the plugins all have the more or less identical output, which is important because with that we can later ensure that all plugins are looking somewhat identical. And that makes the entire framework usage a lot easier in that case. So when we head over to the shell, for example, there's one new feature here, and that's that we now get an idea of which user the current shell is for. In that case, it's the administrator now, but for example, it might be useful to have, let's say, a different user shell appear here in that case. To do that, we can now simply run a new command, start Icinga shell as user. That's the command. And we can then, with the user, we can specify which user we should open the shell for. Then a new PowerShell will approach, and we simply hit the password, click on OK, and then the new shell is open for this specific user. Now we can run every command for this user and see if everything runs properly, for example. So we can do, for example, a CPU check and see how it will turn out. And yeah, depending on how the permissions are set, if everything is working properly, we either receive a result now or receive an Icinga exception. That will take a while because the system is on purpose very, very limited with resources. And as long as this command executes, we can have another check. For example, let's take a look at the use partition space, for example, and see how it turns out. So basically, this is how you can use the new feature to run a specific shell as a different user. Of course, you can do this without the commandlet here, because that's simple PowerShell mechanics here. But still, it's requires not to know anything about that in depth. So now another approach would be, for example, when you want to handle credentials in different shells. We can do so as well. So when I now add my user here within this environment, we can, for example, have the credentials passed in this variable. Now, when in the old version prior to 1.3.0, we had one problem. When you did this, for example, invoke Icinga check MS SQL, you had, for example, the SQL username and SQL password. You always had to create a credential block to ask the credentials within this block, which is not very helpful when you frequently want to develop new topics or new solutions or ensure that everything works out properly. So what we can now do is I just write some dummy data here, and then I will move forward, because what we can now do is we have argument list here. So I will add the credential argument here, or the credential variable. And what we have now is I can do the following. Name the variable credential, and then we have a new variable Icinga shell args. And basically this is simply an array. And what you can do is, when you have an array, multiple arguments here, so this is index 0, obviously, which is credential. And on index 0 within Icinga shell args, we assign credential to this. So basically what we can now do is we can simply add cred username here, and here SQL or cred password. So basically, because we assigned a variable above here, it knows that the content within this own shell would be something like that. Of course, if this is a different data type now, we would have a problem. And basically, we can then access the data now. In that case, once we add a line ending here for the shell. So, and now it would execute if the credentials would be properly. It would authenticate with these credentials provided. But that's how you can, for example, very easily ship custom variables into a new Icinga shell and do a lot more automation tasks, or in our case, ensuring that the plugins all work properly. So we can do a lot better integration tests here for these topics. Now, one big improvement also was the feature to manage WMI permissions. So in general, if you, for example, had to, let's say, check certain WMI objects, you can, of course, open the MMC console. Then you can add the snap-in for these objects. And once you do that, you can hit on properties. Then it will open a new window. You can click on security, and then you can add, for example, permissions on certain trees and so on. So this is basically how you can do the entire modification over the UI. Now, of course, this is something that's, yeah, it's a little, not every, it's not very good for automation, let's say it, let's put it this way. So when we click here, we see right now on this namespace, for example, our demo user here currently is not having any access to. So what we can do is add Icinga WMI permissions for a specific user. That's my user within the demo environment. Then we can set a namespace, and the namespace is something that is shipped within, for example, the plugin documentation. So when we hit, for example, Icinga.com docs Windows, every plugin is now shipping with a detailed documentation for what kind of permissions you require. So here are the namespaces that are required for this plugin. For example, whenever you are having problems with, for example, any kind of WMI permissions, you can hit the knowledge base, for example. You get the detailed description what namespace is causing an issue for you in case you can't fetch any data from it. And here also the commands specified to grant access then, including restarting the Win Management service. So basically what we can do is we can add this namespace now, root sim v2, and then we can grant enable permissions. We can grant remote access, which is required for check by PowerShell, for example. We can add the recurse flag, which means that not only this folder will grant permission to or access object, but all sub namespaces and sub content types as well, which might be required, for example, for the storage part, because there are plenty of different areas you can fetch data from. And then in addition, we can deny access, so we simply block the access from it, but also add custom flags to this. And custom flags are, when we add it, for example, is enable, partial write, subscribe, provider write, read security, write security, and so on. You can simply add them comma separated, and in the end, it will simply apply it. So when we do this now, we simply grant now permissions, recurse permissions to root sim v2. And if we have a look on the UI again, we then see that, for example, when we click here on security, that now our user is having enabled access and remote activated support in this matter. And now we are simply allowed to fetch WMI data from this entire namespace. Of course, if we require, for example, for this CALS plugin different namespaces or for other plugins, we simply can grant permissions to this topic. Of course, we can also remove them. Icinga WMI permissions, user, sales, demo, and then the entire same namespace. Again, we don't have to add the recurse flag here, because what we simply do is that everything that's related to it will be removed. And here we are. And in case the user is not specified, then we of course get the notice that the user could not be removed because it's not part of the namespace. In addition, you can also change the entire permission handling. For example, in this case, the user is now already configured, so it's not doing anything if the configuration is identical. If, for example, we remove the remote access feature, we simply can override the entire configuration here and remove it in the end again. So that's very, very simple and yeah, very unique. Now, one topic that's is having some sort of impact on the current implementation is that when we have a look on the CPU usage for the entire check execution. So basically the problem is that you see here we have 100% CPU usage now, and that's mostly caused because we have currently assigned around 20 check plugins to this MS SQL host, and we simply have 4 CPU cores with 2 GHz. Now, every second we block one of these 4 cores, of course, the entire load of the system will explode and it will feel very laggy. So what we did is that we added another feature, and that's called Enable Icinga Framework Code Cache. Basically what this feature does, it will allow us to generate one cache file for the entire Icinga PowerShell framework. So every single PowerShell module, part of the Icinga PowerShell framework, will be compiled into one file with write Icinga framework code cache, which is very quickly done, as you can see. And what it basically does is, whenever you now write Icinga, it will load the entire framework from this single cache file. Now, you will also receive a warning notification that the framework code caching is enabled, because when, for example, you now do modifications to your PowerShell framework, to the basic code, of course, you always have to generate the code cache again in order to apply these changes. So it's quite a little tricky here, but basically when you, for example, update a plugin now, let's say we want to install the latest snapshot build, for example, what it will do, it will automatically, during a framework upgrade, regenerate the code cache in case the feature is enabled. So as you can see here, updating framework cache file. So basically, in general, you should be safe during the upgrade process. And as you can see, we sometimes hit 100% CPU usage, but still the overall impact for the duration on how long the CPU is impacted here is a lot smaller than before. So within our internal testing, we realized that with framework cache enabled and disabled, it's about 50 to 75% faster to enable the cache to ensure that we have lots of performance to apply here. And this is actually something we can test very easily, because we can start an Icinga timer, then execute, for example, a very basic write host. Then we stop our Icinga timer and then show Icinga timer. And we want to show all. So basically what we're now doing is that we start with Icinga, a new shell instance, write our host output, which is simply host, and then calculate the time. As we can see, we have now the framework cache enabled, and we are around 2.5 seconds for the entire execution of this part, which is, of course, still a lot, but keep in mind we always load the entire framework here in the end. And if we disable it now and do the entire process again, or the entire part again, then as you can see, it takes a lot longer. And yeah, in that case, we're at 7.3 seconds now for this test. So we're even ahead of the promised feature set, because keep in mind, all plugins are currently executed still in the background. So we still have lots and lots and lots of pressure on our system. And once we enable it again and do our simple test here again, we see, okay, 2.9 seconds. So we have lots of improvement, and depending on how much checks you're having, this will, of course, ensure that the system is a lot more snappier from the response. Yeah, so basically, that's so far it for today for the talk, because I didn't have much time slots available. So basically, this is a short summary of what we did with 1.3.0. So basically, we have 2 more plugins that are now shipped. That's for one example, that's the network interface plugin. So you can now check network interfaces to your plugin. And I think my VPN connection just died. Obviously not. Or maybe it's about to die, I'm not sure. But basically, we can now fetch very, very simply network information data. So how much bandwidth are you currently using from the Windows machine? How is the state of your network devices, and so on. So basically, we are very, very straightforward here in that case. In addition, we also added a storage pools plugin. So in case you have storage pools available on your system, you can simply check the current health, how much space is left on the storage pools, and so on. We have no storage pool here in the system right now, but that's what we added in addition. And here is the network package, and you can see there are plenty of data available, which is automatically fetched for each single interface. You also get to know the link speed, for example. So you can also see pretty easy, is your entire link speed, is it having an issue or hitting some limits here, or are there errors on the interface? So that's basically what the plugin will then check in addition. Yeah, for the next parts, we of course try to get a lot more detailed into the next topic. So we want to add additional tasks and additional plugins, features. If you're curious, you can hit to the roadmap, where we are planning the future releases for every single new component. We will also provide a list of features we want to implement, but also parts where we are looking for simple sponsoring, for example, for Exchange monitoring, Active Directory monitoring. We are currently working on Hyper-V monitoring and cluster monitoring, so we hope to ship the plugins once they are tested properly in different environments to the first release in around January next year. Yeah, so that's it for the talk. If you are having any questions, please write them simply in the chat. I will answer them and as best as possible, and also provide additional information depending on what you are looking for. Thank you very much. If you want to follow me on Twitter, my Twitter is here. Otherwise, you can simply write at info@icinga.com or reach out to us over Twitter, Facebook, GitHub. If you have a feature request or a cool idea, please open an issue. If you found a bug, of course, also open an issue, so we can have a look on it in detail and resolve everything that you find. Now, thank you very much for your time, and have a nice day or evening, depending on whenever this call is happening.
So, hello, we're back. Blerim changed a little. I don't know what happened. Something.
For the better, of course. So, hello everyone. I'm Christian. I was the one talking in the video previously. So now with face and without green hair, obviously. So I'm not sure. I don't see any questions, which I think results in the perfect explanation I did in the video for all changes with 1.3.0.
I'm afraid you did fail. There is a question now.
Okay.
So,
Damn. So
how long will the current Windows plugin for Icinga 2 be available before deprecated?
that's a very good question. I can't answer. I can shout out to, over to Blerim if you can answer the question when the Icinga binaries will get deprecated. The plugins, the compiled exe files. Because they are deprecated, I think, as far as I can see.
They will be marked as deprecated very soon. However, there is no set plan to remove them actually.
Okay.
So it's a good idea to move over to Icinga for Windows, but we don't have plans to break any installations very soon.
Okay, so they will be deprecated soon, but they won't be removed from the packages anytime soon. So they will still be shipped within the binary package, and the idea is to move over to the Icinga for Windows plugins then as entire replacement. So that's basically the idea behind it. Yeah, and yeah, I think 1.3.0 did some huge performance improvements, especially with the experimental feature. So especially for that part, it would be great if as much people as possible would test it, because then we can collect the feedback and see if we make it a standalone feature. Will the commands be available soon in the ITL for non-director users? The plugin configuration will become part of the ITL. It's an internal discussion. But they also ship already with new plugins. So the PowerShell plugins ship with precompiled configuration for the director and Icinga 2 natively, and also the get Icinga check command config commandlet now supports to write native Icinga 2 configuration files. So you do not require to use the basket. So if you don't use the director, you can now compile the plugins yourself. So when you write an own plugin, you can pre-compile the Icinga 2 configuration file and simply copy it over to your Icinga system. So that's what was added with 1.3.0. And every single new plugin release we will do, MS SQL will be done this week or next week, that we will ship the precompiled plugins within the master, and with the next release they will be there. And for all other plugins like Hyper-V and Cluster, what we have planned, we will ship the precompiled configuration starting with day one. So basically, that's the goal. So yeah, you can always get on the master and download the latest configuration. But please keep in mind, when you use the configuration from the precompiled ones from the master, ensure that your plugin version is matching the version you're looking for. So, because when there's a new argument or an argument change, you probably might run into issues.
Okay. I just remember that we had a question earlier that was how the Icinga terminal works in Windows.
Yeah.
That you wanted to reply on.
So basically, Microsoft released a new terminal, the Windows terminal, and with that you can combine different kind of shells like this, the command prompt, but also PowerShell and other things. And on the Icinga documentation for Icinga for Windows, there's an integration part. And there is the Windows terminal integration. So what it simply is it will allow you to use the Windows terminal, for example, create a new tab, which is called Icinga, and it will auto-load the framework with an Icinga logo at the right end. But also when you use the regular PowerShell, you can simply type in Icinga instead of use Icinga, and it's just it's a fancy name for the shell, because you will automatically be directed to the root of the Icinga PowerShell framework. So especially when you're a developer, for example, and trying something out, testing something, it's very beneficial to use the Icinga shell. I did it in the video. So you had Icinga for Windows version 1.3.0. That's basically the Icinga shell, and it will directly move you to the root framework, or the root directory of the Icinga PowerShell framework, so you can access natively data from there. I vote for a live demo from Bernd. I don't think we have time for that. We need to go on some point.
Next talk. Yeah, we don't want to keep you until tomorrow, you know. Okay. Are there any more questions for Christian?
I can see you. Okay.
Dan is also in the chat watching menacingly. All right, as there are no more questions for now, feel free to still leave them if they come up at some point, and we can reply later maybe. But for now, I think we're gonna head over to the next talk, which is actually done by me, and just a quick overview over the feedback week we've been having. So I will just hand over to myself and be out. Bye, Christian.
Bye.
Hello everyone, and welcome again to the Icinga Insights, this time for my pre-recorded session about the feedback week. Streaming from my home, where I can show off my lovely green hair, which does not work in front of the green screen, sadly. So, just the mandatory About Me slide. My name is Foy Murek, my pronouns are they, them, and I work as a development advocate at Icinga at the moment. So, that basically means that I stand between the development team and the community and do most of the work that has to do with communication. I used to work as a developer for Icinga, mostly in the web team, for 3 years before I switched over to the development advocate this year. My Twitter handle is the Foy, if you want to go and follow me there. And I also organize the feedback week. The feedback week happened on the 47th week of 2020. That means between the 16th and the 20th of November, and was an entire week just dedicated to gathering your thoughts and your feedback. As it's going to be a new year soon, and New Year's always means new plans, new ideas, new strategies. I thought that we should most definitely go and incorporate your point of view and shape the future together. So we asked you questions on 5 days of the week about our resources, our services, products, the way we work, the way we communicate, and basically everything we could think of. The participation was actually amazing. So Twitter took a steep lead on the participation, but all of the other platforms that we asked around were pretty active as well, which led to an incredible 1,530 votes on the polls that we send out and 66 comments that just directly told us what people were thinking. So the participation actually impressed me a lot, and I'm really happy that it was such a nice event. So in addition to just asking you about your opinions on what we contribute, we also wanted to find the most helpful and kind and caring community members and give back to you, because you have made Icinga what it is now. You have helped us get where we are. So on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we held polls that were aimed to finding those community heroes for their specific categories. The winners that I will announce by the end of this talk will receive a goodie bag and will be displayed on the website for a year until they're being revoted. So I will just go through each day now, and I handpicked some of the questions that we asked, which I thought were interesting for you. Just have a quick view, and there will be a more detailed graphical interpretation of all of the questions in a Google Sheet that I will publish after the event. Starting Monday with the modules, plugins, and integrations. where we asked you about, different kinds of integrations that you use and whether you have ever written your own stuff as well. Tuesday was all about our official Icinga products, so all things that we provide for you. What surprised us there was not a lot of people had tried or even heard of the Icinga DB, the release candidate. So it looks like we're gonna, throw out some more content about it soon and see whether there will be some more information going around about it. Wednesday was all about our knowledge sharer. So on Wednesday, we wanted to see how well we are communicating, our knowledge, our documentation, and what else is going around in the Icinga world. So seeing where people check for solutions, where our information is hidden, or where people are actually looking for our information the most. Whether people have been to meetups, and whether there should be more content on YouTube. We also asked a question whether you would like to have a guest writer role on our blog. And we actually got 9 votes that said, yeah, I would like to do that. And we also followed up on 3 leads already, where blog posts from guest writers are lined up for the upcoming weeks. So we'll have a bit more diversity in our blog as well. Thursday was about the code contributor. That means in which ways you interacted with the code and with us, and how that worked out. So quite a few people have actually contributed to Icinga in this way or the other. So either to the code base, to the documentation, to our community forum where people answered some questions as well. People also have reported issues, and it was apparently rather alright. I just noticed that there is no number on the Never Done It, but I think it was 16 people that have never reported an issue. And the communication on GitHub was also rather mixed on the on the feedback of how good and helpful it was. And we also got a few comments that explained that mixed result. So I think what we took from it is that there are often issues and PRs with very short text and not a lot of text, and that there should be a why or a how there. How to address it. So we are definitely going to go over and see how we can improve on that. So there was another question that was, if you have an idea for a new feature, how would you go about getting it started? And this led to us having a really good idea about, writing a guide about it, how to get your ideas into a finished product in the context of Icinga. So Friday was the social communicator. So we asked whether you've already been in contact with an Icinga developer and whether you would like us to be more active on our social channels. And we are definitely going to try to improve on that one. So to sum it up, your feedback on the feedback week was overwhelmingly positive. It was apparently fun to answer the questions, and I've shared some quick overview over the results in this talk, and there will be a more extensive sheet that I will put on the social medias afterwards. So we're coming to the end. We're just going to go over the heroes. So the first question on the heroes was, who writes the most impressive integrations, modules, plugins? And our suggestions were Carsten, who wrote the Grafana module, Nikolai, who's most known for his Maps module, and Patrick, who wrote the Trap Director. And Carsten definitely won this voting. And the second one is basically under the sign of our social communicator, of our knowledge sharer. So who shared knowledge about Icinga in such a way that it really helped you out, where Martin was the author of a nice blog series with super cool tutorials about Icinga. Moritz, who is organizing the meetups in Austria, so gets people to get together and share their knowledge with each other. And Logic, who is really, really active as a moderator and answering questions on the forum. And while Martin definitely won the voting, there was a large difference in who people thought should win. So, depending on the platform that is. So, these are our final candidates. As you can see, there are more people than just the ones that were voted. We have had some internal votings in the Icinga team as well, because there are a lot of people out there in the community that do so much for us in all sorts of ways and really help us out. So we voted on 3 more candidates. So we have Logic, who won the forum champion, as he is our moderator on the forum, just coming from the community and helping out a lot. Michael, who is our code contributor, who's been doing a lot in the Icinga core. We have Martin, the knowledge sharer, that was voted, and yeah, he writes some really interesting guides and tutorials in his blog. Then there is Tobias, who is our social communicator. He shared, I think, every single post that we had during the feedback week, and he is super active on all social media channels, helping us out. And yeah, being active in the social circles. There's Carsten, who won our integrator voting, so he wrote the most popular module, our Grafana module. And there is Stefan, who is also super active on our forums, and he has been answering a lot of different questions consistently over the years. And we wanted to thank him for that as well. So those are our candidates for this year. There is going to be another feedback week in a year where we will do this entire spiel again. And yeah, those are the candidates. We have our website for now, but please know that every single one of you is appreciated, and we appreciate all of the help that we can have and that you want to give us. So in this sense, you can already see that this does not look like our normal website. This looks kind of darker, and that has something to do with a new website that launched today, our new Icinga brand. So I'm going to hand over to Julia, who is going to enlighten us about our new Icinga brand and how it came to be. Thank you.
And we're back.
And we are back. And there is no Julia as of yet, as we're still going to give you some question and answer time. Please ignore my little editing fail that I did there. And yeah, so before we hop into the Icinga brand, feel free to ask questions. I would hand over to Blerim real quick, because we did have a question in advance that we overlooked earlier.
That's right. While going through the questions that have been submitted during the registration process, there was one very interesting thing that we didn't mention before. The question was if there will be a cluster-compatible version of the business process modeling. So far, there are no actual plans to build it. In terms of, we are not actively working on that. However, what is pretty interesting is that we indeed experimented with this kind of things with a director, because basically this functionality would be interesting for all Icinga Web modules, especially when we once we get more modules like the director, like the vSphere DB, like the certificate monitoring, having the possibility to run high available setups is a pretty interesting feature set, which definitely is something we should do. And we started experimenting with the director a while ago. It's not a project that we are actively working on. It's more like a side project, I would say. But yes, we kind of have it on our minds, and it's probably a matter of time until we figure out what the best way is to do that. So yeah, that was that.
Okay. There is an
So
answer.
there's one recommendation from
Ah,
Carsten
yeah.
in the chat to use GlusterFS and Webhook to run Icinga CLI based on checks in a HA environment. Could work for some installations probably.
Thanks, Carsten. So it looks like there aren't any questions specifically about the feedback week. There will be a more in-depth analysis for everyone who wants to know the numbers soon. TM, probably tomorrow or next week. But I think we're just gonna hop on over to the new Icinga brand instead now. So that's a talk by Julia. She won't be joining us after the talk as she's not in the office. But we still have the talk recorded, so I'm gonna go and play that now.
See you.
Hello everyone, and thanks for having me at Icinga Insights today. I want to talk to you about the Icinga brand and basically how and why we build it. This talk is pre-recorded, but I will be there live as well as others from the Icinga team to answer your questions after my talk. This is me. I'm Julia and I'm working as marketing manager for Icinga. A shower of confetti was pouring over the heads of celebrating people while Bernd, our CEO, was welcoming everyone to the party. And the song by Black Eyed Peas was played, which finally was released just shortly after Icinga was seeing the light of the world, which was in May 2019. And yeah, it was for sure a wonderful night. 1 month later, we were sitting at our HQ in a meeting room and our CPO Blerim was talking to us about how we want to raise more awareness for Icinga in the US and that we need a campaign for that. And we were thinking about how to build that campaign and what material we have. And we had to realize not the appropriate one, at least nothing that seemed appropriate to us. So that was the day when you can say the project branding Icinga was born. And I want to share with you today how we created that brand, why we did it, why it was hard, why we need it, also why you need it, what's so cool about it, and how we go on from here. So the first step in the whole branding process was to sit together and think about a branding strategy. And you can basically sum up everything we did under 4 steps. And this was the first step of the whole process. Who develops a brand strategy? Usually not one person alone, it's done by a team. So our team consisted of 6 people, you can say. Flo, Kea, Bernd, Foy, Blerim, and me. And in this first step of the whole process, we first defined the goals of the whole branding project. And our goals were communicate more clearly who we are and explain our people where we stand and where we are going. We said that we want to have a new brand design that fits to the architecture of Icinga, and that is also a blueprint for new to create content and put it together in an organized manner. And of course, we wanted also to fuel recognition and make our big idea and meaning accessible. Here are some impressions from that first phase. We had a workshop to kick off that project, and we defined what we want to do and how and why, like more what and why, and talked about milestones and defined the resources that we would need. And yeah, as you can see, not all milestones made it, but are still to come, like Icinga Conf. We also defined and wrote down a guiding principle that for that phase. We said we want to build a brand identity that accurately conveys our essence and is flexible enough to evolve with us. And once we had clarified this, a wide range of possibilities opened up. So to narrow things down, the next step was doing research and with a goal to define where we stand currently and where we want to go. And you can say that spending time on research gave us a better understanding of who we are, how the users and the customers see us, and also we looked a little bit at our competitors. And we tried to take an internal and an external perspective, and methods and activities we did that helped us in that were a user survey that we had in 2019, interviews with large companies using Icinga, of course all the meetups that we joined before, and our Ask Me Anything booth at events that informed us about needs and requirements regarding Icinga. Also all activities in the community, like in the community forum or in social media channels. And of course also internal workshops with our people in the company. One method that was also quite helpful was the SWOT matrix to define strengths and weaknesses that are like more on the internal side of the matrix, and also like external factors like opportunities and threats. Step number 3, defining the brand story. And in that we also realized that one important thing that you have to do before you present your brand story and who you are to the public, you have to find a shared narrative and a shared values within the company first. And that might seem like obvious that you have that, but really defining it and getting to a shared story that everyone stands behind and for, and is quite tough. And some pictures. What was challenging was also that all of us came from quite different directions with different knowledge and different skill sets. So some knowing Icinga right from the start and like knowing it like the back of their hands, but maybe not seeing the forest for the trees. And some that were rather new to the team, but came with a fresh view and many questions. So what we developed during that phase was, we said that we want to present Icinga with its core strength. And these are the 6 final ones that we worked out. Also, we defined values that are important to us as a company, but also that are values that we consider when we build Icinga, and like values that stand behind everything we do. And we wrote down a mission. You can say our mission is to create a place for everything related to monitoring. And we want to enable users to build a tailored monitoring system that perfectly suits them. Step number 4 was to create the brand identity. And that means like finding a design system that works for us, that is appropriate to display and to visualize our architecture, our system, but also our values, and tells something about what does Icinga mean to us. So design differentiates and embodies the intangibles, you can say, and that is what it makes really hard, right? It's not about showing something that you can touch or that is like explorable by your senses, but it's more about an emotion, the context of it all, and the essence of what Icinga means to us. But at the same time, these are the aspects that matter most, you can say. And we wanted Icinga to show our essence and be simple and to the point, but at the same time carry enough ambiguity to evolve with us. So we also noted a guiding principle at that stage, which is we want to create a brand that is unique and valuable for the customer, and we want that brand to be minimalistic and friendly. Here are some pictures from that phase, which was wild. In the beginning, we had some creative tasks, like imagining Icinga as a planet, which you can see on the left picture with all the sticky notes, and then we thought about words that are appropriate and that help us, and we collected them, associated on them, and we also thought about how what visual elements could stand for these words and the ideas. And one graphic that was developed in that stage was the Word of Icinga graphic that came out of that creative tasks. And one important aspect of the design process was finding what we called the heart of Icinga, like one essential graphic that can represent Icinga as a whole, and options that we designed in that phase. Like this is one of the options. Another one, option number 3, was also a bit about playing around with shapes and different colors. Here's another heart. And the winner of the whole finding the heart of Icinga process is what we call the orb. And let me tell you why. There's good reasons why we wanted the orb to be our element. The orb is abstract, it's simple and iconic at the same time. It's kind of generic, and you can use it like a blank canvas to fill it with values. It's scalable. You can have it like really small, like an atom, or you can have it really big, like a planet, so the size is not defined. It's organic. It can move. It feels kind of alive. You can let it pulse or like grow and move. Yeah. Make it feel like it has a heartbeat. It's mysterious. You can see like with the different layers and the different shades it has, that it's kind of complex. Seems simple from the outside, but is complex from the inside. And what we also liked about it is the sci-fi aesthetic that it has. It's visually interesting and it arouses curiosity, but it's also powerful. It's like a source of light. You can see the lighter inside and lighter center. And like that, it also symbolizes insights to us, but also understanding and intelligence. And you can use it in different colors, which is also important for our core strength that I showed you before, but we will get to that later. Also, part of the design process was finding icons. And these were early ones that were like at the same stage developed like that guy with a looking glass that is looking at the planets. So it's still a white background and more than 6. So at that time we had more core strength, which later got narrowed down to 6 now. Here you can see that we shifted the icon design in the direction of the orb already, to have that glowing style of the orb and to show the sci-fi look, to bring it to the icons too, but all in same color shade still. And the next step, after deciding that we want to stick to that style, was finding colors to differentiate them more. So these were the first 2 colors that we came up with. And then it was more about defining the icons a little bit more. And we realized at that stage that we need to figure out a certain rule that we follow. Not just defining colors, but also regarding the shapes, because we wanted them to work colorful, as you can see them here, but also maybe later having them as a flat design, or having them just as one color, which brought with it that we had to find shapes that look different enough, but at the same time follow a certain rule so that you can see that they are all connected. And one rule was that we have one basic element in the background that is made out of 1 or 2 shapes combined. We defined that shapes. We defined the basic color, and we said that we wanted to be simple, abstract, and geometric. Also, we want to have a highlighted element in, not in the background, but davor. And that element is the one that should communicate the core strength and should therefore have one color that stands for that core strength. And that element should also be abstract and unique. And elements are blended and overlaid. So layering and depth play an important role for that multicolored icons, and also have this sci-fi look. So here is all of them. except one is not final on that slide. You will later see which one. But these are the final colors. And for 5 of them, also the final shapes. And you can now see how the orbs also work with the icons together to define that core strength. And here is how we use them on the website. And you can see now that notifications got a different icon. And yeah, the other state. And together with the orb that stands for the whole Icinga stack, they work to visualize the stack. So now let's look back at what I said we would do in the start. Why we did it? Because we had to. We were ready. For having a blueprint, as I said, for further campaigns and stuff. We wanted that. Why it was hard? It was a tough process with many discussions, open questions, and like many decisions that had to be made. Why we needed to communicate better and have a blueprint for future content. Why you needed to navigate through our universe and, of course, to fall in love with it. What's so cool about it? It's unique, it's flexible, and it's Icinga. And we go on from here by developing more content to communicate our brand and to expand it to more touch points. The first one you can already find since this morning, since we relaunched our new website. And one last character I want to show you, we call them the Lalas. It's actually 2 of them, and they appeared quite early in the process, also in different colors. They were pink and yellow at that time, but then also got developed further in the direction of the orb and this sci-fi look. And we love them. And everyone, when you see a Lala on the website or anywhere else, be sure to find someone to help you, to be able to ask questions, to get in contact with the community or with us, with someone. And one last picture or 2 from our branding process. It was a lot of fun. We grew together. We grew with a brand, but we also grew together as people. And it was a lot of fun. So thank you for your attention and your interest. And now we got time for your questions.
So, hello. We're back now. Julia couldn't join us today, but as you saw just now, we both were also part of the team. So if there are any questions about the new brand, the new website, feel free to ask us. I'm already new website colored partly, so I'm all up for the questions. I'm in the spirit.
Yeah, it's. I think that was the last talk. So
It was.
We do of course have time for any other question as well. So we will just stay here for some time. Be your
Minute or
hosts.
two. Be good hosts. Yes.
Feel free to ask whatever you want to ask us regarding Icinga. I think for us it was a pretty cool event so far.
Yes, it was.
I was a little bit excited about it, to be honest, but not because of the content or of the talks, more because of the technical aspect. If everything will work regarding streaming and video calls and questions, answers, but it worked pretty good, I think.
Big shout out and thank you to Christian for helping me putting all of this together. Our streaming setup is pretty cool, pretty complex though. So I'm just happy it all worked out as well. So there is a question. Can we ask questions about the REST API?
You can ask the questions, and we will see if we are able to answer it here, or if we have to move it to a longer discussion, maybe to the forum even. But please feel free to ask first.
Yeah, you can ask questions. The better question is whether we can answer them. Okay, so while you're typing out the question, the plan was to end before 6, and we're through with our talks. So yeah, this is the last bit of questions and answer sessions. So if there's anything that you got left over, any questions that you didn't get around to asking earlier, just shoot them now. Yeah, we're just gonna try to answer everything that comes in now. And yeah, like Blerim said, if there are any other questions that you maybe do not want to have discussed on the stream right now, but still feel curious about it, or if you don't want to take up space, please come to the forum, the community.icinga.com forum, and ask away there. I'll be there as well. So I see the question just came in. So when will the REST API support the creation of scheduled downtimes objects, not scheduled downtimes?
To be honest, I would have to ask what exactly you mean by that.
Objects.
So
yeah.
while the first question, maybe you can rephrase it, because I'm not quite sure if I understand correctly. We can hop on to the second question. If it's possible to create more video content, so is it?
Well, I'm definitely gonna try my very best to get more people to do some talks, and I think Tom is also up for just talking about the director for another 5 hours. It's just a question of time, really, because we want to make sure that our developers can actually work on their development as well and aren't constantly busy recording talks for us. But maybe I can think of some sort of format that can work for both, or maybe have a webinar about it, because Christian's already working on webinars pretty much all of the time over at the NetWaste channel. I think they are all in German exclusively, though.
Yeah.
So maybe we can just port some of that over to Icinga and have it here in English, so it's a bit more accessible.
Yeah, and also maybe additionally to that, what we started a couple of months ago is to write more blog posts in order to be more transparent about what we are currently working on. And we also started writing more how-tos in our blog as well. So it definitely makes sense to follow our blog, and we will publish more tutorials and more how-tos there in the future. So yeah, as mentioned, we started that just recently. You can find already a couple of how-tos there. On the new website, you can filter them pretty easily. On the top of the blog overview, you can filter by how-tos, and you can expect more of those posts in the future.
Yeah, so just go to blog.icinga.com and you'll find some good content over there as well. But yeah, the plan is definitely to make more video content happen, to maybe even have more events like this one, but that is still in the far future whether we want to do that or not.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, just give us some feedback, actually. So if there are no more technical questions and it doesn't look like there are, feel free to just leave us some feedback in the chat, what you liked and didn't. Okay, there's...
Okay. So currently you are not able to create those objects, even though you are able to collect the information about existing scheduled downtimes. I cannot tell for sure when it will be possible to create them. However, what you could do in the meantime is to create the downtimes with a custom script, for example. So it is possible to create the downtimes, as you mentioned earlier. So I think that's the best workaround that you can use by now. if you don't want to use the Icinga 2 API, that's also possible through the Icinga Web 2 API. So scheduling those downtimes via custom script currently is probably the best workaround until we reach the point where we can create the scheduled downtimes actually via the REST API. I hope that answers the questions more or less.
Okay. I think if that answers the question, it's time for us to wrap up. Okay, looks like it did. So it's time for us to wrap up and let you off the hook. Go into your well-deserved evening. And I hope you've had as great of a time as I did moderating this, sitting here, talking to you. So
yeah, thank you very much for joining us today. It was a pleasure. So hope to see you soon. Stay safe, and we'll be out now. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.